So, very good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, Jai Hind. I hope each one of you are doing great. Now, in this today's session, we will be discussing essentially this topic of class 8th NCERT, wherein we will have direct relevance of this topic to the Indian Constitution. Now, the NCERT topics that we had studied for class 6th and class 7th NCERT were more of the topics that wanted the student to have clarity about the governance system in the country. Now, these topics from class 8th onwards, you will understand the topics, and these topics will let you understand the concept as well as the working of the Indian Constitution. So, when we start off with this topic, now today we are starting off with class 8th NCERT, and herein I will start the topic, the Unit 1, the Indian Constitution and Secularism, and today we will study the Chapter 1, the Indian Constitution. Now, understanding Indian Constitution is very important. Now, when we talk about the Indian Constitution is not merely a document. In order to understand it, okay, we must understand that this Constitution is a living embodiment of aspiration of the people of India from the Constitution makers. The struggles that Indians have been through, the vision of the Constitution makers, the vision of the people of India for themselves, and ultimately the aim was to establish an equitable and a democratic society. Clear? Okay. So, a very good afternoon to all of you who have joined me now in this session. Okay, so all of you who have been in this session for the very first time, let me tell you that from today's topic, we are essentially starting the topics around the Indian polity. In this NCERT, for the very first time, you will have topics that are around the Indian polity. Class 6th and 7th topics were more about understanding the governance in the country. Clear? Chaliye. So, do let me know in the comment section, am I audible loud and clear? And also, all of you who have joined me now, do let me know in the comment section that which UPSC attempt are you targeting, 2027, 2028, 2029? What essentially are you trying to build up? Do let me know in the comment section. Okay, chaliye. So now when we start off with this topic, we have already heard about Indian Constitution a lot. Now, many of you, when we talk about the Indian Constitution, many students might not be having very clear understanding about the formation of Indian Constitution. Okay. Now, if I have to highlight all of these provisions as to when did the Indian Constitution evolve, or for the very first time, when did we have this idea that there should be an Indian Constitution? Okay. Yes, Devilo ji, yes, complete NCERT is being discussed here for free. Okay. Complete Indian Polity NCERT from class 6th to 12th is being available here. Class 6th and 7th we have already discussed. You can see the topics in the playlist, and today I am starting off with class 8th NCERT. Okay. Now, when we start off with this topic, you must have a very clear idea about the timeline, about the activities that led to the development of the Constitution of India. Okay. Now, essentially, okay, Can any one of you tell me, okay, that when for the very first time, a demand for Indian Constitution was made? Can you please tell me? Anyone who can tell me this. Now, when we have to understand this complete timeline, just remember, many of you believe that Indian Constitution was uh, compiled from 1946 onwards. Many of you have this belief. But let me tell you one thing, that for the very first time, if we have to talk about the development of Indian Constitution, it had started from 1934. Okay. And a very prominent communist leader, M.N. Roy, for the first time had articulated this demand for a constituent assembly. Means that he was the one who for the very first time had articulated that there should be a group of Indians who shall compile the constitution for the people of this country. Now this demand was officially endorsed by the Indian National Congress in 1935. Okay. So it was in 1935 that the Indian National Congress had acknowledged this demand, and they too adopted that yes, we must have a constituent assembly. Clear? So the road to Indian Constitution did not start in 1946. It had started way back in 1934 itself. Clear? Now, one more thing that all of you must understand is, at times this question comes up as to when did the British for the first time acknowledge our demand to have a constitution for ourselves. Okay. Now, it was in 1940 the Britishers, through the August Declaration, through the August Declaration, okay, Lilith Go, had declared that yes, the Indians demand, the Indians should have a constituent assembly to draft a constitution for themselves. Okay, so it all started in 1940 when the Britishers had acknowledged this demand of ours. Okay, now after this, we can understand that lot of things had happened. The Quit India movement started in 1942. Okay, Subhash Chandra Bose ran a parallel independence struggle from outside the country. Okay, and it was then in 1946 that a prominent activity in the form of the Royal Indian Navy ratings mutiny took place at the Royal Indian Navy ship Talwar. Okay, popularly then called as the HMIS Talwar, Her Majesty Indian Ship Talwar. Now, immediately after it, all of us have seen that there were various proposals that came up. But the most prominent then was the declaration of and arrival of the Cabinet Mission Plan. Okay. Cabinet Mission Plan, then led by Pethick Lawrence, including Stafford Cripps as well as A.V. Alexander. Okay. Now, this Cabinet Mission Plan that came to India had laid down the provisions for setting up of a constituent assembly. So, even though we have heard of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who did the ultimate work for creating the Indian Constitution, but there were many more leaders who had contributed directly or indirectly to the making of Constitution of India. Clear? So the Indian Constituent Assembly, after the cabinet mission plan, it had 389 members, but when partition of India was finalized, the Constituent Assembly for this Indian Dominion was set up with 299 members. Clear? So this Indian Constituent Assembly had the dual responsibility of framing the constitution for independent India, and also they had the legislative control, legislative powers for this Indian Dominion. Clear? So this must be understood as to how this entire concept of the Constitution of India had started to evolve. Okay. Now, when we move ahead beyond this, okay, when we move ahead beyond this, we will also understand the context of the Constitution of India. Clear? Now, this Constitution, as I have told you, it is a living embodiment of aspiration of Indians. Okay, what Indians want, what type of governance do they want? Everything has been given in this. Clear? Chaliye. So now, when we move further into this topic, okay, a very important question is being addressed through this topic. Okay, now this topic essentially says that why does a country needs a constitution, or what essentially is a constitution? Now this is again a big question that most of you might not understand. Now, when I have to say, India can be broadly divided into two categories. Okay, the government and the citizens. So this is the major classification and the most broad classification that can be done. The country is divided into two groups, the government and the governed. Okay, now what is Indian Constitution? Okay, and what essentially is the role of Constitution that everyone must understand. Okay, now if we talk about the Constitution, it is a set of rules. Okay, it is a set of rules for the government, okay, while they have to govern its citizens. Clear? So this is the most basic definition of the Constitution that you can understand. Okay, it is a set of rules, a set of guidelines which are required by a, excuse me, which are required by a country while they have to govern its citizens. Clear? Now, in this topic, we will understand about why do we need a constitution and what essentially are the key features of the Indian Constitution. Okay, so all of you, if you all of you are understanding these things, okay, then do let me know in the comment section that you are well part of the topic, and in case you have got any doubt, please do let me know. Okay, please keep on asking your doubts as well. Okay, now the question comes that why do we need a constitution? Okay, as I have told you that the constitution is essentially an agreement. Okay, and today we can understand that in this world almost all the countries have a constitution. Okay, now constitution is something that is highly required for the democratic countries. Okay, democratic countries like India, wherein you have the right to dissent, you have the right to put up your grievances. Okay, now constitution also works for the countries which are not democratic. So this constitution has got several purposes. Okay, now this topic tells us the first and the most important purpose of the constitution. Okay, now this constitution lays down certain ideals that form the basis of kind of country that we as a citizens aspire to live in. Okay, so the most important thing for a constitution is that it lays down all the fundamental principles, okay, which are required by an organization to govern its people. Clear? So that is the first crucial purpose that our constitution solves. Okay, now we can also understand that this constitution also tells us about the nature of the country. Okay, so we have seen that preamble that we usually understand as the introduction to our constitution tells us about the nature of the country, the objectives of the constitution. Clear? And in why constitution becomes very necessary, because a country is usually made up of different sets of communities. Okay, people with different sets of beliefs, people with different sets of faiths. Okay, so constitution, which is a very mandatory set of guidelines, helps to serve as a set of rules and principles that all person in a country can agree upon as upon the basis of the way in which they want their country to be governed. Clear? So a constitution helps serve as a set of principles that all persons in a country can agree upon the basis of way in which they want to be governed. Clear? Now, essentially, we have seen that what all are the different type of governments we have. Okay, they have certain set of ideals. Okay, and all of these things that a country should uphold have been mentioned in this. Okay, now in this topic, even though we are talking about constitution as a whole, okay, or in general, this topic gives us the example of Nepal. Okay, now in Nepal, this country had been in the process of making their constitution twice. Okay, previously it was in 1990s that the constitution of Nepal had been made, which reflected that final authority must vest with the king in the Nepal. Okay, now it was a movement that had started against the king or the monarchy in Nepal. It was in 2006 that the power of kings were ended. Okay, and again we have seen that it was around 2015 that the country had also adopted a different set. Okay, so we need to understand that the people of Nepal adopted a new constitution for their country second time in 2015. So the other thing that we need to understand is that other important purpose of the constitution is to define the nature of the political system. So what essentially is the nature of political system? I hope all of you have been able to understand this. First thing, if we get, the constitution lays down certain sets of ideals. Okay, clear? So in our country, we have seen that ideals of justice, equality, okay, have been laid down. Second, it also lays down the nature of country's political system. So India is not a monarch. Okay, and in India we can see that we essentially are a republic. Okay, why do we say that we are republic? Because the head of the Indian state is not a monarch. Okay, the head of Indian state is essentially an individual who has been elected indirectly in the country. So we have an elected representative, thus we follow a republican form of government. Clear? So if we have to compare this with Nepal, okay, the earlier constitution of Nepal had stated that the country shall be ruled by the king and his council of ministers. Okay, so if we have to see this in comparison about the countries that have adopted a democratic form of government, the constitution shall play a very crucial role. The constitution shall lay certain important guidelines that are required for making effective decision making, for making effective governance in the country. So what does this republic structure, what does this democracy means? Okay, now in India we have the power to choose our leaders, and these leaders can exercise powers upon our behalf. So there is even though possibility that leaders might misuse their authority and power, but constitution is a stick, okay, that always ensures proper safeguards against any sort of misuse of power. Okay, this is the reason why in previous topics I had told you that Indian constitution has very nicely been framed. Okay, in Indian constitution you will find a decentralization of power. Why do I say decentralization? That the executives, they cannot work in absolute manner. Okay, if the executives, if the government is being doing something wrong, then there is judiciary to every time keep a check and balance upon the working of the government. So this is how we can see that our constitution itself provides for the safeguards against any sort of misuse that can be undertaken, okay, any sort of injustice that can be provided. Clear? So we have seen that in the democratic societies, the constitution lays down all the rules that guard a country against any sort of misuse. Clear? So in democratic society, the constitution lays down the rules that safeguard against these misuse of authority by our leaders. Okay, so all of you do join me on my Telegram channel also, because I in the NCERT topics. Okay, why do these topics become important? Why are these sessions important? Because I keep on highlighting and defining the key concepts of this topic. So when you are going through the NCERT on your own, you need not go through each word and line. Okay, there are important terms, sentences, keywords that I'll keep highlighting, and I'll share this annotated with you in my Telegram channel also. So do join me in the session, and do join me on the Telegram channel also. Clear? Chaliye. Now, moving ahead, that Indian constitution, we have seen that Indian constitution lays down all the redressal of grievances. Now, why redressal of grievances are important? We have seen that in the Indian society there is lot of diversity. Okay, we have seen people belonging to different caste, different religion, different race, different gender, different place of birth. Okay, moreover, the Indian constitution guarantees one very beautiful thing, which is the right to equality. Okay, so this right to equality, it ensures that whatever the case may be, the people in the country would not be uh, subjected to any sort of discrimination. Clear? Now, the other important thing that we need to discuss is that this constitution, it also plays a very important role in democracy. Okay, now this constitution ensures that the dominant group does not use the power against the less powerful people. Clear? So, in a country like India, we have got provisions in our constitution itself. There has been various enabling clauses. Okay, and those enabling clauses says that people belonging to depressed classes shall not be exploited, okay, or harmed by the people belonging to the so-called superior categories. Clear? So this is why we understand that Indian constitution brings along with all the safeguards. Okay. Now, this constitution also contains rules that ensures minorities are not excluded from anything that is available to the majority of population. Clear? So this ensures that the resources shall not be concentrated into the hands of few. Okay, so this again becomes a very important reason as to why we should have the constitution. Okay, so this constitution, when it is given, it prevents the domination by majority over the minority. ठीक? So this is again a very prominent feature. So you can understand this, that while people have been referring to each other belonging to different communities, different to domination, okay, inter communities domination or anything can be well taken care of. Okay, now next thing about the Indian constitution is that why we need a constitution is to save us from ourselves. Now this is something that is slightly confusing as to why do we need to save us from ourselves. So this is a significant reason. Okay, now even though it at times looks different, but what does this term exactly means? Okay, it means that we might at times be very much strongly inclined towards something. Okay, but something might go against us in a longer run or in a larger interest. So the constitution helps us to guard against all of these things. Okay, so the best part with constitution is that it saves us. Okay, next is the constitution helps to protect us against certain decisions that we might take that could have adverse effect upon the larger principles of the country we believe in. Okay, so it is quite possible that many people who live in democracy, they might come to strong feelings about some party politics, okay, or any sort of discontentment. Clear? Now with this emotional discontentment or emotional rush, okay, we may not realize that what wrong we can do to ourselves. So this is the quality of a good constitution, that it does not allow the whims to change its basic structure. Okay, you might think that at times the government can do anything, but the constitution, as already previously also you would have studied, that in 1973 Keshwanand Bharti case had came up with a very prominent provision, which is the basic structure. Now, under this basic structure principle, the constitution has laid down that there are a few things that the executives, that the parliament cannot amend, they cannot change. Clear? So a good constitution, it does not allow the basic structure to be changed. Okay, and it does not allow for easy overthrow of provisions that guarantees rights of citizens and protects the freedom of the people. Clear? So by and large, the freedom of the people, the dignity of the people, the respect of the people is of utmost relevance in the Indian constitution. Clear? So we can understand that this constitution, it finally plays a very important role in the democratic societies. Okay? Now, when we move ahead, we need to understand the key features of the Indian constitution. Okay, the key features of the Indian constitution. Now, when we have to read the key features of the Indian constitution, okay, we will also understand some very important thing. Indian constitution does not uh, was not made overnight. Okay, the Indian constitution had essentially been based upon the struggles of the people of India, struggles of the freedom fighters, struggles of the nationalists. Okay, so we have seen that British constitution is a non-written constitution. So in Britain, it is the conventions that are followed, but in India, India through the Indian constitution, okay, we have understood one thing, that in India, essentially, okay, essentially the country requires democracy. Okay, so we have seen that the entire world had been under the authoritarian regime. Okay, now India essentially is a democratic. Okay, India essentially is a state wherein people can participate with the government. Okay, so this is something that we have to understand, and we again need to reiterate that Indian constitution was not made overnight. Okay, there were various assemblies that had worked over it, and then they were finally able to bear the fruits of this. Okay, so what all are the features that have been talked about in the Indian Constitution? Let us discuss them. Now, the first feature that has been talked in the Indian Constitution is federalism. Okay, now India, unlike country like USA, is not a federal country. Okay, and it is a country which depends upon the concept of union. Clear? So we have seen that in India we have got vast number of communities. Okay, which means that a system of government needed to be devised that did not involve only persons sitting at the capital of the country and making decisions for everyone. Okay, instead it became important to have another level of government. Now we know that there are three levels of government. Okay, first is the local level. We have studied about the panchayats. Okay. Then we have the state level, and then we have the union level. Okay. So if we have to practically ask one thing, then all of us might be understanding that practically there are these two levels. Okay. Now, this union government or the central government that sits at New Delhi would not have been in the situation to make laws for the entire country. Clear? So, in this situation, okay, India enjoys autonomy in exercising powers on issues. Why? Because there have been certain set of rights it between the center as well as the state. Clear? Now the constitution, it contains several lists. Okay, the constitution, it's has got various lists that detail the issue that every tier of government should work in a specific manner. Okay, now the constitution also very nicely specifies where each tier of the government can make laws. Means if we need to talk about the schedule 7 of the Indian Constitution, we have got three things: union, state, and concurrent list. Okay, so there are subtopics for union, some for states, and some under concurrent list. Now, in the union list, it is only the union government that can make laws. Now, under state list, it is the state government that can make laws. Okay. Now, in concurrent list, both union plus state government can make laws. Okay. But in case there is some conflict, means a law has been made, but there is some conflict in this. Okay. And this central list player uh, essentially the state list player, okay, is also trying to make laws over it. So in a situation when the concurrent list topic are being taken up by state or union list, okay, or the state or union government, then the decisions that is taken are taken in the name of President of India. Sorry. So decision that have been taken, okay, and in case those decisions or the laws which are made, they are incongruent or conflicting, then the law that has been made by the union government shall prevail. Clear? So the constitution contains these three lists that detail the issues that each tier government can make laws on. Okay. Moreover, the constitution also specifies where each tier of government can get the money for the work. Okay, so under federalism, the states are not merely agents of the federal government, but they draw authority from the constitution as well. Okay, and all persons of India are governed by laws and policies which are made by union as well as the state at their respective levels. Clear? So you need to understand this also, that how federalism works in the country. Okay, and under federalism, the states are not merely agents of the federal government but draw their authority from the constitution as well. And all persons in India are governed by laws and policies made by union and state at these different levels. ठीक? Now, the next feature that comes up here is parliamentary form of government. Okay. Now, parliamentary form of government, okay, different tiers, I hope all of us have understood. Okay. Now, in this parliamentary form of government, the Constitution of India, okay, guarantees the universal adult suffrage for all citizens. Okay. So, at the time when the Constitution was being made, the members of the Constituent Assembly had an urge that the freedom struggle had prepared the masses for universal adult franchise. Means the people are ready and they are mature enough to elect a representative for them. And this was something that will encourage a democratic mindset and break the clutches of traditional caste, class, or and gender hierarchies. Clear? So this very clearly means that people of India have a direct role in electing their representatives. That is by giving a vote. Okay. Now, along with this, every citizen, irrespective of their social background, can also contest elections. Clear? And these representatives are accountable to the working for the people. Okay. Next feature comes as the separation of power. Now, these are some very important features, and questions around these important features are asked every year in the examination. Clear? So now, the Constitution says that we have got three organs of the government. Okay. Now, what all are the three organs? Legislature, executive, and judiciary. Clear? Now, legislature are the ones that makes the law. ठीक है? Executives are the one which executes the law. Okay. And judiciary is the organ that checks constitutionality of the law. Clear? So judiciary will check that whatever law has been made, is it in congruence to the provisions of the constitution or not? Clear? So ultimately you have to understand that India enjoys the concept of separation of power. Clear? So there is separation of power. The legislature refers to elected representatives. Executive is a smaller group who are responsible for implementing laws, execution of laws. Okay. And judiciary is essentially the one which is the upholder of the constitution. Clear? So constitution basically says that since we have got three different barriers, okay, so misuse of government, misuse of power by the government, okay, is something that can also be taken care of. Constitution says that each of these organs should exercise different parts, okay, and through these each organ acts as a check on the other organ of the government, and this ensures the balance of power between all trees. Clear? Now, after this topic also describes a very beautiful thing, which is the meaning of the term state. Now, many of you, while reading the topic, okay, you often confuse the word state with the actual term or the literal term state. Okay. Now this word state that has been used in this topic, okay, it does not go move to the state government. Clear? Now this topic essentially talks about every office of public authority. So just remember this term state, when used in topics around fundamental rights, it talks about the union government, okay, it talks about the state government, okay, or any office of public authority. Clear? So you need to understand this thing, that this term state does not only refer to the state government. Clear? And even though the state does not uh, essentially, okay, the state essentially refers to a political institution, okay, that is representing sovereign people occupying definite office, okay. So we can say that the government is a part of this entire set of state. Clear? So state is something that has a deeper meaning. Now after state, the next most important thing that comes up is the fundamental rights, okay. Now these essentially are those sections of right, okay, and these rights are referred to as conscience of the constitution, okay. So this is conscience of the constitution, the inner will of the constitution. Now can anyone who is part of the session, can you tell me that why are fundamental rights important? Why are fundamental rights important? Can any of you tell me this? बताइए. Can anyone tell me this? Why fundamental rights are important? So understand one thing, that India, the greatest flex of India is democracy. Democracy means that we are free to uh, favor the government, we are free to oppose the government, okay. And these democratic ideals can only be fulfilled when we have the fundamental rights. Clear? So fundamental rights, it purely depends due to it purely depends because this region has to be a democratic region. Clear? Now fundamental rights, essentially we have seen that during the British times, there was suspicion of the state in the minds of people, because the government before independence would go repressive against the people, against the children. Okay. So, to protect citizens against these arbitrary and absolute powers, okay, these fundamental rights are there. So, the constitution guarantees these rights to the state as well as the individuals, and all of these rights are available. Clear? Now, moreover, the various minority communities have also expressed the need for constitution for themselves, okay. So our constitution also guarantees the rights of minorities against the majorities, okay. Okay. And as rightly said by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, okay, these fundamental rights, they have twofold objective. Now, these fundamental rights, they have two objectives. The first objective is that every citizen must be in a position to claim these rights. And secondly, these rights must be binding upon every authority that has the power to make laws. Clear? So just remember one thing, that these fundamental rights, they are not just against random individuals. Okay, these rights are against, are on the state as well as, okay, as well as binding upon the authority that has the power to make laws. Clear? So in addition to all of these, the fundamental rights, the constitution also has something called the directive principles. Okay. Now these directive principles also came through the Government of India Act. Okay, how? Now people would be confused and you will say, no, no, sir. Now these directive principles of state policy essentially means the directions for the government while making laws. Okay, directions for the government while making laws. And these DPSPs, we can understand one thing, that these DPSPs, they form the basis of the constitution, as to it makes the government understand that how they should work for the people. Clear? But since they are not binding, they are, okay, these are not binding, as so these are not justiciable. Means if the government does not follow these DPSPs, okay, then there are no redressal mechanism. Okay. Moreover, also understand that these DPSPs were based upon the instrument of instruction which were imposed in 1923. Okay, after the Government of India Act 1935. Okay, so after the Government of India Act of 1935, an instrument of instructions was given to the Indian government. Okay, and these DPSPs were also can be correlated with those same set of document instrument of instruction. Clear? So we have understood that these DPSPs, they are designed by the members of the Constituent Assembly to ensure greater social and economic reforms and to serve as a guide to the leaders in the independent India while they have been making laws for its people. Okay. Now, if we talk about the fundamental rights, we have got various fundamental rights. Okay. Right to equality. Right to equality that has been given under Article 14 to 18 of the Indian Constitution. Clear? Then right to freedom. Now this freedom has been given under Article 19 to 22 of the Constitution. Right against exploitation, Article 23, 24 of the Constitution. Freedom of religion, Article 25 to 28 of the Constitution. Cultural and educational rights, Article 29, 30, and right to constitutional remedies, Article 32 of the Constitution. Clear? So this is how these fundamental rights have also been mentioned, and these are the key features of the Constitution of India. Clear? Now, lastly, here comes another very important concept. Okay, now we have seen concept of fundamental rights, DPSP, and I'll let you know the differences later on as well. Okay, now these total fundamental rights have been given under Article 12 to 35 of the Constitution. Article 12 and 13, they are sort of definitions. Okay, and Article 34, 35 and 33, these are a form of enabling clauses in the Constitution. So we'll be discussing them in detail in the topics to come. Okay, so these are basically, you can understand that what does our Constitution give, what all are the features of the Constitution. Now the next feature that comes before us is the feature of secularism. Okay, now secularism, a secular state is one in which the state does not officially promote any one religion as the state religion. Clear? So in a country like India, our country does not have a fixed religion. Okay, our country does not say an individual to practice only a fixed religion. Our country is secular. There is no state-sponsored religion in the country, and everyone is free to adopt any religion as per their whims and fancies. Clear? So the kind of constitution that a country adopts for itself, okay, the constitution plays a crucial role in laying out the ideals that every citizen would like for its country. Okay, now it also includes the representatives that we have elected to rule us. Clear? So Indian constitution has been a very holistic, has been a very cumbersome document because it covers the diversities of our country also. Now, even though this constitution has been amended many a times, okay, but this constitution essentially reflects the fundamental nature of the country. Okay, what essentially is something that our country wants. Okay, and as we have seen these different features of the Indian constitution, we can understand how complicated ideas are there, which essentially at times become difficult. Clear? So this is essentially, we have seen that in this session we talked about why do we have constitution, and along with this we also talked about the different features, okay, of the Indian constitution. Okay, clear? So we can see that our constitution has got various things. Okay, constitution also has got fundamental duties. Okay, now let me tell you a basic difference about the fundamental rights, DPSP, and fundamental duties. Now, fundamental rights are set of compulsory advices, okay, or compulsory provisions for its citizens. Okay, the citizens must have fundamental rights, and it becomes the responsibility of the state, responsibility of the government to ensure that everyone enjoys the set of fundamental rights. Okay, now these DPSPs, they are essentially moral obligations for the state. Okay, and DPSPs are basically the rules that are to be followed while making laws. Okay, so not exactly rules, but essentially these are like instructions. Okay, so DPSPs are for the state, are for the government. Now, our constitution gives us a very precious thing, fundamental rights to the citizens. Okay, and since the implementation of fundamental rights is very important, it becomes a negative connotation for the state because state must have to follow them. Okay, now the constitution provides us with fundamental rights, so it is our moral responsibility to give back something to the country also. So these are these fundamental duties. So these are the moral obligations upon citizens. Clear? So these are, you need to understand that these fundamental rights, these are justiciable. Okay, but these DPSPs and fundamental duties, these are non-justiciable. Means these are non-justiciable. It means that for their violation, okay, the state cannot be dragged to the court, or for the violation of fundamental duties, the citizens cannot be dragged to the court. Clear? Okay. Remember, fundamental rights are available under Article 12 to 35. Okay. DPSPs are available under 36 to 51. Okay, and fundamental duties are 51A. They were introduced in 1976. Clear? Chaliye. So these are essentially the basic understanding information about this topic of our constitution, how the constitution evolved and what all are the important features of the constitution. Clear? So anyone, if you have got any doubt, please do let me know. Also do join me in my Telegram channel. It is named Defense Decoded. Okay, and in this channel I shall share all annotated PDFs of all the sessions which are taking place daily. Clear? Okay, so in case you guys have any doubt, please do let me know in the comment section. Okay, along with this, today is the last day. Okay, the admissions are closing for our GS Foundation course in the P2I batches. You can avail the complete GS Foundation batch at very low price, at as low as 7,999. You just need to use the code SRM Live. Clear? So use this code SRM Live to avail maximum discount, okay, upon our course subscription. Clear? So this was all from my side today. Now, if you have got any doubt in anything that we have discussed today, please do let me know. Okay, and we will be I'll be more than happy to help you out. So today we have started off with class 8th NCERT, and now gradually we will move on to the upcoming NCERT topics, and finally we will culminate this series after class 12th NCERT. Clear? Chaliye. So thank you all for joining me in this session.